What's going on, everybody? This is your man, Big Stu, Scott Stewart or Professor Stewart, depending on how you know me, and we are back for yet another edition of Dope People. Last episode with Dr. Crystal Porter was so good that we had to continue the conversation and bring her back for a part two. Dr. Porter, welcome back for part two. Continue the conversation. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
I am well and rested. So listen, let's just do, for all of you who are chiming in for the first time, I just want you to know, if you want to get the full bio on Dr. Porter, go check the previous episode. In the beginning, we go through her extensive bio. Again, for those who don't know me and are chiming in for the first time, my name is, as I stated already, Scott Stewart. I am an 18-time award-winning teacher of business and technology. I am the anti-teacher, the self-proclaimed Kanye West of youth, business, tech education, and podcast host. And I spend time here on Dope People talking to some of the best and brightest in education, in the field of education. And we are here with, again, none other than Dr. Porter. She was so dope on the last episode and we had to bring her back. Dr. Porter is a hair scientist and owner of Main Insights Incorporated. It's a company that conducts research to further understand the specific needs of the hair and scalp. She is recognized in the world of hair science and also provides knowledge about hair to individuals, professionals, and industry leaders. There was a part, Dr. Porter, where we were talking about, which is the part where it was like starting to get really, really good. Where we were talking about your transition from you as a school-age, girl into working specifically at L'Oreal. And we were talking about your experience with hair and how we might encourage, or how you might encourage other women, other young ladies, particularly of color, to think about science and STEM careers and business. We were exploring some of that. It was like getting really, really good. And for those who, again, go check part one of this to get an idea of where we left off. But Dr. Porter, can you talk about your how you approach education or encouraging people, primarily students of color, and how you approach engaging them into thinking about STEM careers?
Wow. So everything has evolved with me, because initially, I think I bought into how everyone says that STEM needs to be fun, right? And you've heard that, right? Have to make it exciting for kids, and they'll, jump into it. And now I'm not necessarily convinced of that anymore. Not to say that that's a bad thing to do. I think making it fun is one thing, but when someone feels really passionate about whatever they're doing, that's really where the drive comes. Because sometimes I find that young people aren't necessarily, if they're passionate about something, it's not always fun for everybody in the same way, right? And I think that we need to pivot a little bit and actually see what's going on. So I think a lot of times we need to market it a little better. And what I mean by market it, I'm talking about the education of it. So for example, with my collaboration that I have with Chicago State University, where there are naturally students there who just have a passion for beauty. And because they have a passion for beauty, they want to learn more about it. And so when you break it down and you show the different scientific aspects of hair science. For example, it incorporates engineering. So if you're measuring the quality of hair in terms of its strength, that's engineering and physics. If you talk about looking at the statistics and understanding the physical properties, it's all based on mathematics. If you want to talk about the structure, that's biochemistry. So it incorporates biology and chemistry.
Wow,
if you want to model the hair and look at, how it may perform outside of real life conditions, then that's computer science. I mean, so there's so many ways that you can incorporate science and really base it on the passion of what young people will have. So that's my approach now. And I particularly work with cosmetologists. And so not only do I try to help students, and even if they don't want to go into hair science, even if they can develop the skills, the scientific skills and the foundation using their passion, then they can take that knowledge. And even if they don't go in science, they can start making informed decisions about things that aren't necessarily related to hair at the same time.
What's your teaching strategy, if you have one, and I want to make sure I stay on point, because there's something else I want to tie into this, specifically to your own children. Ooh. What's your teaching strategy for students? I service a lot of students in what is deemed as underrepresented communities. And in my own experience, I found that many folks in those communities, I'm from those communities, we are tend to be pretty deficient in math and science. Do you have a teaching strategy to up-educate, I made that word up, to up-educate students who may be deficient in math and science to, bring them up to par to move forward in the sciences?
The short of the answer to that question is no. However, I am starting to develop a strategy. But I do want to say one thing that I'm learning is I'm being really challenged. I actually love working with the hair practitioners that I'm working with, because a lot of them don't like math and they don't have that appreciation. And so when I first started down this journey, I think I went down, or am just now stopping the traditional way of teaching, pretty much the same way that I learned.
There you go. Say that part. Say, repeat that for the people in the back, please. You are stopping the what?
The traditional way that we do things.
Oh, ding, 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 ding. Okay, keep going. What are you doing different now?
So I'm meeting people where they are. And what I mean by that is, if they don't have the passion to learn something new, then it doesn't mean that they can't contribute in a different capacity. And I'm trying to make sure that as I move forward, that I use creativity to bring I guess, how do I want to put it? To make sure that there are circumstances or different ways that they can contribute, even though they are where they are. And for those, but at the same time, I think I'm surrounded by so many bright people, and to engage them, or to engage people who do have more of a propensity and passion to do it a particular way, to engage them more in those areas so that we can all work harmoniously together, if that makes sense.
It does, which is a great segue to the question, because both of your daughters are and correct me if I'm wrong, both of your daughters are in STEM fields.
Yes, they are.
How? Everybody wants to know the answer to this. How were you able to encourage, guide, get both of your daughters to be in STEM careers? And tell us again, just briefly, what they're both doing and how you believe you were able to get them there. Was that a, that's too many questions in one question, but let's start there. What are they doing and how were you able to get them there?
So starting off with the oldest, Nia, who is, I won't tell her age, but she is more seasoned. And believe it or not, I didn't think that she was going to go into STEM. However, with, her dad, my husband, who is an engineer.
He's also, there you go, Curtis. I'm sorry, but let me, because he may not want to be.
No, that's fine. No, that's fine.
So yeah, your husband's an engineer. Okay, keep going. Yeah.
He's an engineer and I hung out with engineers. I mean, I met him because I hung out with the engineers, right? And so I think that's all we knew and all the connections that we had. And so I am a proponent for making sure that students have, so my own and other students have the opportunity for extracurricular activities, but also enrichment programs, academic enrichment programs. They are like awesome because when I was coming up, they really didn't have a lot of them. So I had no clue what I wanted to do. So I immersed both of my children, like I said, starting off with Nia, in everything that I knew. So there were programs at Chicago State. So Nia went to programs there. There were programs at IIT.
And you said, so, and let me ask it, was she willingly going or was there some kicking and screaming along the way? I'm very curious. I'm sure the listeners are very curious to know this.
Nia was kicking and screaming the whole way.
All right.
But I mean, she didn't know what she wanted to do, and she was more like artsy. I really did think she was going to be doing more artsy stuff just because she liked that type of stuff. And she developed this passion for anime before anime was cool. And so manga, for those of you who may not know what manga or anime is, and if she heard this, she would be like, that's not it. But my interpretation of what manga is, it's almost like the, I want to say cartoon, it's the comic strip or book version of what we have as comics, but it's based on Japanese culture. So it's comic book Japanese culture. And then, so she has lots of manga. She has loved anime ever since her dad introduced her to the Powerpuff Girls. And so she liked that type of stuff. So I thought she was going to be drawing and doing that type of stuff, but it ended up, she took an affinity to game design and development, even though she's not what people would think of as a gamer. And there's a particular thing that she uses to describe the type of gamer she is, but it's like interface, like on her phone. She plays like games on her phone. It's not like with, a TV screen and a console, right? No, it's not that type.
Mobile gaming, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she's a specific type of gamer. And so she went into game design and development. And of course, Curtis fell in love with that because when we went to curriculum, to learn about the curriculum at the institution that she wanted to go to, we were like, oh, this is computer science. And we learned that she'd get a job and a decent paying one at that. So we were like, okay. Yeah, so that is where that started. She really didn't know what she wanted to go into. And so that's kind of what she fell into.
And what is she doing now?
She's a software developer now.
She's a software developer.
She's a software developer.
And
your
youngest child, tell us a little bit about
the youngest child. So totally opposite. So if there are any parents out there, your children are not the same. They couldn't be any more opposite than they are. So while my oldest went to academic enrichment programs, kicking and screaming, my youngest couldn't wait. She couldn't wait till she was old enough so that she could go away. She should get her experience. So I tell the story because I'm pretty strict. When I mean strict, I'm pretty strict. I would say, yeah, most of my friends think I'm just too hardcore, but I don't believe in paying for college, for one.
There you go. Say that again. We're
I
gonna
don't
put that
believe
on
in paying for
repeat.
college.
Rewind, whatever that rewind. If I'm gonna find the rewind effect, I don't agree with paying for college. Say it again, Dr. Porter.
Yeah, I don't pay for college.
There you go.
That just doesn't happen. And so I say that to say that, you know, I'm pretty hardcore. But the story is, the youngest one went to her first going away. So it was at Northern Illinois University. So we had to drive her there, and it's not that far from where we live. It's like maybe a little less than an hour away. So we drive her to Northern, and we buy a burner phone because she doesn't have a cell phone, because I said I was hardcore because I didn't believe in my kids having phones. And so my oldest, when she was in high school, had, all her friends had one, but she didn't. And she had the like basic phone. It didn't do anything.
Kind that the kids was afraid to take out in front of other kids' phones.
Yes.
I know what you're talking about.
Yes. And so, same with my youngest. She didn't get a phone until she was much older. So with her going away, we were like, we'll just get this burner phone or whatever. We did not hear from that child at all. She immersed herself in that program, and I had to call the person overseeing the program. And I was like, can you have our child call home? Because we haven't heard from her.
Wow.
But yeah, she was thoroughly enjoying herself. So I say that to say that she just immersed herself. So anything that she could do, she loved it. And so she's doing, I'm her mom and I'm amazed, doing great things. So she's a biochemistry major at Hampton University right now. And I don't believe in paying for college. And just like I set up my oldest not to have to pay for college, I did the same for the youngest. But the youngest looked at her oldest sister and was like, I'm not going that route. Okay. So she took advantage of everything. So being able to apply for a lot of scholarships. So the first 2 years were paid for through numerous scholarships that she had gotten externally. And then she went in as a presidential scholar as well. Wow. So tuition was paid for, but then all the other fees were paid for with external scholarships. But when she got there, she was able to get another scholarship which pays for everything. So she is good. She is good.
Come on. This is phenomenal. This is worth an applause. This is worth an applause to have, a Black family, an engineer. You're not only an educator, a business owner with a doctorate, but and don't let me screw it up, you're a biochemist as well. And then you have children who go on to get into STEM careers. There are a lot of us who are in this space. That's called, family goals. We would hashtag family goals on that. I'm intrigued. I'm super, super intrigued that you not only are able to help so many other practitioners, students, and then that you and Curtis, you and your husband were able to also get your own 2 children in that space. But I think you said something that's super important. It's like, hey, this is all you all knew. And this is something that I tell, I just repeat a lot. I just believe that kids, our children, far more pay attention to what we do than what we say. So whatever we're showing them, there is a propensity for them to wind up doing some similar things. I'm not saying that's the case, and it's not exact in every situation, but I'm sure there are higher rates of children following behind their parents based on what they do. Dr.
Well,
Porter?
but you know what? Having said that, though, I want to say that even if they had interest in other areas, I would have supported that as well. So I know that, if you have a fruit salad, you need different tastes from different areas to make everything taste good and come together. I truly do believe that when it comes to career choices and expertise as well. So it just so happened that that's what happened, but it wasn't by design. We did not intentionally set out for them to be STEM professionals. But having said that, we know that it is extremely important for them to have a foundation to make informed decisions. And when you have that analytical acumen, it allows you to see the world through a different lens than if you don't have it. So that is more of the goal for us as parents, to make sure that they are just appreciative of every discipline out there.
Yeah, and you're also reinforcing the truth that parenting takes work. You cannot just sit by and let the kids just raise themselves and educate themselves. You all put in a lot of work,
Yeah,
with your children. And you, like you said, no matter what it would have been, you would have still put in that same level of work in supporting them. Dr. Porter, after our last conversation, after we ended in our post-game show, if you will, I talked about how I had I tend to think of your work only being targeted towards women. Women specifically care more about their hair. This is me making it up. You're only talking to women, but obviously men have hair. And you were saying, I was asking you, is this, you only deal with women? And you were like, no, 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 no. Men too, right?
yeah.
We have our facial hair, of course, as well as, I don't know, do they call it the hair on the top of your head? Is there another scientific term for that?
Head hair. Nope,
Head
that's me.
hair, facial hair, body hair. There was something that you said that really struck out with me. My hair on my face is very, very coarse. I have to keep it moisturized, and otherwise it's like really, really rough. But you said something about the hard water in our area, and Dr. Porter and I are both in the Chicagoland area, and Chicago has the hardest water in the country. I think you alluded
Well,
to.
if you consider metropolitan areas, is
Of the
definitely competing with. Last time I checked, it was #1 in terms of hardness, which is
Yeah,
not good for us. You use more detergent, and it clogs up your appliances. There are a lot of things that result from the fact that it's hard. But yes, it also affects our hair.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So what should, and this is what should, how do we soften the water? What could we do in the shower? I know you could buy a water softener.
Right.
You can install a water softener in your answer
Mhm.
that. But if you don't have a water softener, are there any other strategies or techniques we can do to soften the water on the daily?
So what we usually do is add surfactants when we cleanse. So a lot of times that does soften the water. And that's why, your hands become slippery when you put a surfactant or soap on it. And so that helps to soften it. But using conditioning agents, which is why there are fabric softeners, it's the same type of chemistry and technology in fabric softeners as it is in like a hair conditioner. So those are things that you use to soften the water to make sure that those hard water elements, the calcium in the water can combine with something and then, go down the drain instead of being deposited on your hair.
Do
That's
you
basically what you do.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that tip. Are men asking you about hair at all, hair care? Are men asking you, or is that or no, they're not?
Not a lot of men ask me. However, what I learned when I was at L'Oreal, I was in charge of a hair collection project. And so a lot of the hair that we collected came from men. But what I didn't realize, my eyes became wide open because I thought when we remove hair from a man that it would be, it's socially acceptable for them to wear their hair bald, for them to have a short fade. Of course, a lot of them that came in because they had to have a minimum length of 4 inches. So they can wear their hair braided or in a fro to have that length. So it's acceptable for men to wear their hair short or long. And in my mind, I thought that it would be no emotional ties to their hair. So if they had braids or cornrows or whatever in their hair and they came to get it cut, we didn't shave them bald. We left them with a nice fade. But they were very anxious about the whole process. And I was shocked. I was like, wait a minute, it's not that you're gonna be shunned or looked at strangely with short hair, but men have a connection to their hair that I was not aware of till I had that experience.
It's amazing what Samson did to us. The impression
Right.
that Samson left on men. We look, I didn't pay attention to a lot of stories in the Bible, but Samson was one. Samson was the man, right? And there's a lot of emphasis definitely put on men's hair, right?
Yeah.
I think it's our ego. For example, I'm obviously bald or wear my hair bald, but it's the ego that allows me to do it proudly, because there is that there is that, I don't even know the appropriate term for it, but connotation associated with, there is that a relationship between a man and his hair, his long hair, his head full of hair.
You are absolutely right. And it's
Right.
funny because I'm thinking about when Curtis, my husband, he was starting to lose his hair a little bit. And so with me being a scientist, I mean, I got all kinds of stuff that I want to try out. So I was trying to convince him to try something, a product. And he was in denial. He was like, I'm not losing my hair. And I was like, Curtis, yes, it's a little thin there. And so his barber confirmed, and he tried the product and the product did work on him.
Wow.
And so he's fine. But it took some convincing because he was in denial. So it's almost the opposite of being so sensitive that, like I said, based on my experience at L'Oreal, they were like, oh my God, you're gonna cut my hair, being, so sensitive to him, just being in denial, like, no, it's not wrong. Wait, and the excuse was my barber just cut it too short. I was like,
oh yeah.
no, that ain't it.
Today we call it the LeBron James effect. You just can't let it go. You just gotta let it go.
Oh.
I remember the first time, I saw a picture of myself and it was the top of my head and it was thin. And it was like an hour later, I just was, I'm not about to play these games with myself. I went all bald. Now I had a head full of hair around everywhere else, but it was thinning. And I was like, no. And I've been playing bald ever since. And that's been well over 20 years. So it was like, I'm just not going to do it. But let me think for a second here, Dr. Porter. So you're in the STEM fields, you're working to educate practitioners to be more educated about hair, right?
Yes.
Maybe about 10, 15 years ago, maybe about 10 years ago or longer. I've always seen these like Rogaine commercials. I've seen Rogaine commercials for men since, in the early 80s, right? Mid 80s for sure. Mm-hmm. Now I'm starting to see men do all kinds of stuff that I never imagined men accepting. So I don't even know what to call them, frontals. Men are getting pieces. I mean, I know what a toupee is, but I always thought toupees were for white men. I didn't know black men were doing toupees. But now it's become more socially acceptable for men to get these. Please educate me right now. What are the appropriate terms and what's happening with men and covering of their bald spots? Educate us, please. Take a moment to educate us if you can.
So I've heard, so we call it, if we do like a formal study, it's called a hair prosthesis, no matter if it's a man or a woman. But I've heard man weave. I mean, I've heard all kinds of ways of describing it, but
Yeah.
in essence, it's what you just described. It's hair that was not there that someone has applied onto the scalp. And I think the creativity of it is like freaking awesome because for some, you can't tell at all. And I think that that's amazing. And right now, so of course, if you could keep your own hair, that is what everyone would desire. And if there is emotional trauma or insecurities that exist as the result of someone losing their hair, whether they're male or female, right now, my mindset is whatever it takes to make you your best, go ahead and go for it, if it's not going to be detrimental. Now, one of the problems, now, if you're losing your hair and you haven't found a way to correct it, there are some ways. So when you first start losing your hair, time is of the essence. You really need to make sure that you get the attention by a qualified professional to make sure that you are able to reverse what is occurring. But if you're at the point of no return and the follicles of your hair have scarred over and no longer can produce hair, then if you want to present yourself in a particular way, I find no problem doing it. The issue that I have is with a lot of the hair prosthesis or the weaves or extensions, a lot of times it does damage to the hair follicle when you have a perfectly good head of hair on your head. My issue is when you do that extensively and it does cause your hair to fall out or you to have scalp issues, when you don't address it, that is the main issue I have with hair prosthesis. And so if it's healthy for you to do so.
Okay. I appreciate that education. Hair prostheses. I did not know that. And I could go down that rabbit hole. I remember hearing procedures where, literally procedures that would take weeks and surgeries that would be required on those follicles and all kinds of stuff. And let's switch to women for a little bit. So here's my take, and I'm gonna put it out there from a man's perspective, right? I think many of us men, and this probably will be pretty controversial here. Many of us men prefer, when especially I'm talking Black men. Let me talk Black men to Black women, right? We're okay with women with their natural hair. And we have these conversations, men have these conversations. I'm sorry, guys. We have these conversations about, all that weave is not necessary for us. We would like to be able to run our fingers through our significant other's head of hair. That we're often stopped, right? We would love to go on vacation and our significant other go into the pool with us, and things like that. What, in your estimation, by your best analysis, is the connection for women and quote unquote hair prostheses? I'm probably saying it wrong, but we got a dope educator here to help me out. So what is your understanding, Dr. Porter, of Black women and weaves.
Okay.
Wigs and weaves. Just curious.
Oh, you're really trying to put me on the spot, but I'm going to be honest with this. So just so that people know, hair prosthesis is one, hair prostheses is more than one. So that's
okay. Thank you. Thank you. I don't mind being educated. I know where I was as a student in school. Okay, come on.
Okay. Now, as I said earlier, as long as it's done in a way that you can keep your hair healthy. I think where we fall as women, Black women fall down the rabbit hole is, or go down the rabbit hole, is when we are so unhappy with the hair that we were born with. And what I mean by that is not the fact that it's curly. I think that we set the standard so high, that bar so high, because we see people who naturally have this long, thick hair. And when I say long and thick, I'm actually talking about the density, so high density. So it's a lot of fibers on the scalp, it's lengthy, and there are a lot of men who prefer longer hair. And because sometimes it can be challenging for those of us who have tighter curl patterns, it's more difficult to go through or to manage it in such a way when we're grooming it that it won't break off and be shorter. Now, it takes a lot of time and it takes a whole lot of energy.
That's where a lot of mamas came in and was like, look, we're just gonna throw this perm in here at early ages. At early
Absolutely. And I truly, truly understand it. And so I have shared the story when I first started working at L'Oreal. I was doing my experiments and saw, the effect of sodium hydroxide on the hair fiber, not talking about the scalp and how it can burn if you use the product incorrectly, or if you have a sensitive scalp, or you just leave it on too long. So removing all those factors, that if you put it on the hair fiber, it does indeed make the hair weaker. So I decided, because my hair was relaxed at that time, I said, I'm going to grow my hair out. And I was doing a good job. And I decided to do it while wearing cornrows. I said, you know what? I'm just going to be wearing cornrows and grow my hair out. And it was working for a while until I see that I am more susceptible to a condition called traction alopecia. Traction alopecia is a condition where when you pull on the hair, on the scalp, and it wasn't pulled tight. So I was smart because I knew that, or smart enough and knowledgeable enough to know that I did not need tight braids. And so even though they weren't tight, my hair was still being pulled from the follicle. Now, I think, and it's purely a hypothesis, but I think that my scalp condition, I have a condition called seborrheic dermatitis, which means that my scalp flakes and becomes irritated. And I think because it is irritated in the areas where I was having, those hair loss issues, I think that was probably what increased my chances of having hair loss in that area. But truly a hypothesis based on me talking to other people, and that's something I need to investigate. But I say that to say that when you wear the cornrows and sometimes you just are more susceptible to hair loss, then, that is something that happens. Now, did I put extra extensions in my hair? It depended upon what I was doing. And I don't like to do it because I don't like to deal with it, but that is an option for us to enhance our look. I don't have a problem with it if it's done responsibly. What happens is I think that we want our hair to look like what Black men gravitate towards. And I have heard Black men express that they like longer hair. And so your opinion matters. And we tend to do things that Black men are wanting. And we are also critical of each other as Black women. And I've had people say, natural hair isn't for me. And so there's so many opinions out there, but if it's done responsibly, it's nothing wrong with enhancing your look. I would say temporarily. I don't think it should be your everyday choice of style.
Yeah, I heard a few
And
things come out of that, Dr. Porter. And let me be very, very clear. I am non-judgmental of what women do with their bodies, their hair. I have no dog in that fight. To your point, you do what works for you. That is your choice. And I guess that your comments about what you've heard about men just proves that everybody's different, and my group may swing one way in that conversation from what I hear, but it's all over. People have their own opinions about what they like, but I also hear that society plays a role, right? What media is showing, and then there's self-esteem, how we feel about ourselves as well. This hair care industry is huge.
huge, yes,
Huge.
huge.
As a matter of fact, I want to look up. I'm gonna look up how large is the hair care industry.
So it depends on if they consider the hair prosthesis or not.
Okay, well, just hair salons in the U.S. market is at $46.2 billion. $46.2 billion, and that's up 16.9% over since 2020. $46 billion just in, that's not hair care products. That's not the prostheses.
Prostheses is correct. Yeah.
Prostheses. I'm gonna work on that one. That's not that. That's not the products. And I mean, I've heard the stories about how much. I've never done the actual research about how much beauty supply stores actually generate. I've never done that research, but I understand it's pretty significant. You are in a very, very important position, which is why it was so dope to have you back on Dope People. You are an educator. You have done work at Chicago State. You have your Ph.D. You are a real Black woman. You say, what does he mean? You're a real Black woman. I mean, like, you're like a Michelle Obama Black woman. And I'm being facetious here, but I mean that. I do mean that. Like, you're relatable. We can touch you. We can identify with you. You make it plain for us to understand. You're not speaking above anybody's. And I'm not just talking about me. I've experienced you in many different settings, and you never like speak above where people are. You're not trying to set yourself as on some pedestal that's unattainable. You keep it quote unquote real with yourself and with us, and that is appreciative. You have a beautiful family. You are contributing to the space, and you are not just dope, but you are an anomaly. You're an outlier. It is amazing to be able to sit down and listen to you talk about your craft. You seem very passionate about it. And it's not that you seem very passionate about it. You are very passionate about it. So Dr. Porter, what else should we know? Tell us a little bit about Main Insights. That's your business.
Yes.
Let's talk about Main Insights for a little bit. Let's talk about that. Tell us what you want us to know. What do you do at Main? What does Main Insights do? We briefly touched on it in part one, but let's dig a little bit deeper. We have a few minutes left. Let's dig a little bit deeper into what does Main Insights do? What's the mission of Main Insights? What's the objective of Main Insights?
Main Insights is a company that I want to be a household name, where if there is any doubts about what people should do, I want Main Insights to be one of those resources that they can go to. But Main Insights isn't what I would say would be just my company. I want Main Insights to be anybody who cares about hair. I want people to have some type of ownership. Now, I mentioned that I collaborate with hair practitioners, and that's on purpose because I feel that the population, for those of us who don't want to deal with their hair, who just don't have time to do all the quote unquote research on Google, which isn't real research. If you don't have time to, go and dig in deep, there are some people who are passionate about that, but a lot of people don't. I think a lot of women in particular, and some men just don't know where they can go for trusted information. So that's why I'm collaborating with hair practitioners, because if you look at the standard cosmetology textbook that they use, there are no references. There have been so many advances in hair. There is no reason why that should not be disseminated into the cosmetologist textbook or barber textbook for that matter. So my goal is to educate them while elevating the industry in that capacity, because I think they need to have the foundation based on science and to understand the fundamentals of science and relying on that to provide their clients with the best care. And when that happens, everyone wins. So while right now on Our Black Hair Matters movement, I have the Facebook group, I have the YouTube channel. While I'm educating the masses, I'm just really holding a space for these professionals to come on in my place to start educating people, because we need to do more research together. So I have a group of practitioners who are research assistants. That means that they are helping me to collect data because their fingertips are literally in the data as we as scientists need to understand better what's going on and the effect of all of the products and the grooming habits and practices and any like lifestyle, other lifestyle parameters. There are so many things we have to look at and no one's doing it. And that's why the movement is called Our Black Hair Matters, because we should be in charge of it. We should demand to get information as to whether or not these product companies are getting the information, because if they're vying for our dollars, they need to be putting in the money and the resources to make sure that it is for us, because even though there are some of my peers who say, oh, hair is hair, that has been proven in the laboratory not to be true. And if they are conducting experiments and coming up with that conclusion that hair is hair, that just means that the instrumentation that they're using isn't sensitive enough to detect it. So I say all that to say that it's up to us to make a difference. And I want to spearhead that and make sure that people are taken care of in the way that they wish to be.
I really appreciate that, Dr. Porter. I want some couple of things as you were talking about that. I think about my own experience with my hair, and so there are a couple of things. Have you ever heard that? Do you understand? Have you ever heard that this theory that more successful people don't have, particularly men, don't have facial hair versus do have facial hair? Have you ever heard that theory?
No, but I can see why people would say it.
Why would people say that, Dr. Porter? Why would people say that, Dr. Porter?
Right. So my understanding would be that Black hair, and you describe yourself that you feel that your facial hair is more coarse. And so when you have that coarseness and you have that curliness, then it's going to look more intimidating.
Damn.
In my opinion, I think that would be the perception of what people would believe. So when there is an opportunity for promotions, if you are in the situation where you have to depend on someone to promote you, then the people in charge would be less intimidated if you don't have facial hair. So that makes sense to me, even though I haven't heard it.
Well, there's also supposedly in I don't even know, in society, old society, men with facial hair couldn't be trusted. Because if anybody's ever paid attention, if you put a picture of a man with a face of hair, and then you have a same man with no face, they look very different. They can look very different. So supposedly, if you have a face full of hair, supposedly you're hiding something, is the theory in society among men, which is why, newscasters are seen more trustworthy. And I don't understand why only 10% of the Forbes 400 list, 10% of the men only don't have facial hair. I haven't quite put that together, but it's very, very interesting. Where can people find you, Dr. Porter? Where can they learn more about Maine Insights? Give us all of your contact.
Right. So I have the Our Black Hair Matters YouTube channel. I do try to cross-reference Maine Insights with Our Black Hair Matters. I really need to get my social media together so that you can go to either one. Also, I encourage people to join the Our Black Hair Matters movement Facebook group. So you can do a search, Our Black Hair Matters, and you can join the group. I can be LinkedIn. If you are, more professional and you want to look up like everything that I've done, then LinkedIn. Maine Insights has a page as well as my personal page, Crystal Porter. And yeah, I'm accessible. I'm always looking to meet people who are just as passionate as me, especially if they want to join the movement in their own way, because like I said, it's more than just me. There are professionals who look at hair in terms of the emotional aspect of it. And so, if someone wants to collaborate in that capacity, because a lot of women need help, especially if they are suffering from hair loss. So I have vetted team members who can help women and men who are, I have no idea what to do with my hair. So if you just need guidance, I have vetted team members. So I'm here. I am here for you. And as we get data, it's going to be disseminated so people will learn more, so that practitioners will learn more. So yeah, I'm really excited. 2022 is going to be the year of Maine Insights, because I have put things in place where I can start to roll out much faster. So thank you for allowing me to share and maineinsights.com. I also do have a website.
And all of your contacts will be in our show notes.
The main way that you can do it is to tune in to Our Black Hair Matters. I do my lunchtime chat. Sometimes I do have replays, but most of the time it's live, great information that's shared, trusted information. Reach out, join the movement. That's really what would be appreciated. Just asking those questions. Let's have the difficult conversations. And I thank you for allowing me to, kind of weigh in on some of the more controversial topics, such as wigs and weaves. I do understand that, Black men have their opinions, and I've seen it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think that's what's making this platform super special. Is that, first of all, although we're always looking for dope people, and this ain't for everybody. You have to be about something to be on this show, and you were so worthy of a part two. When I know you, but to sit and to read and to listen to you, I just realized I hadn't given you enough exposure, knowing you and what you do in this so important field of STEM education and hair, right? And I love, love, love what you're doing. with the Black Hair Matters. Is it Our Hair Matters?
Our Black Hair
Hair
Matters.
Matters.
Our
I
Black Hair Matters.
love what you're doing with Our Black Hair Matters. Love it, love it, love it. Dr. Porter, it's been such a pleasure to sit and listen to you again.
Thank you
part
for
two.
allowing me to share. Yeah.
Absolutely. For everybody out there, you already know what it is. Until next time, peace.